Hey Internet, welcome back to Wheels on the Neals. Shooting this week our narrative introduction from my porch. This was an open air porch that I converted. I'm going to do a quick view around. You can see currently primarily a kid porch, but I converted this from an open air porch into a insulated, closed in. A couple years ago, my good friend Rick, who lives in Atlanta, came up and helped me with that. I've done a lot of that sort of stuff to the house. Even though I'm an academic by training, I like to think of myself as a kind of Renaissance man. I do lots of different stuff. I can do home repairs, I can do car repairs, I can do art. I like to do all sorts of different stuff. I have a wide variety of hobbies. Uh, so this week, I had a couple interesting things. We had a close to deal about a week ago, and that at the last minute fell through because of my stupidity. I had a brain fart of a significant margin. So I had never thought that Lauren would want to get rid of her Audi, but come to find out, the Audi's place in her heart has been stolen by our 88 528, the BMW. And so there was a guy with a Jeep, a lifted built Jeep Cherokee that I was talking to about trading for, and we had decided to trade the Audi for it, and which surprised me. I really didn't think that Lauren would go for it, but we've been really wanting something that we can haul stuff with, a 4x4. I'm really getting tired of messing with these old Ford trucks, the F-150. Every time I get in it, it somehow is getting worse, and I am just fed up with it. I am tired of the fact that I put thousands of dollars into this stupid thing, and that's not so much the truck's fault as the mechanic's fault, but it's just, I don't know. So we've been looking for a 4x4 something or other that we could use in lieu of a truck, basically. And so, we were all set for the deal, and then we remembered, Lauren literally went to I was getting coffee ready to drive down and meet this guy and trade for the Jeep. And Lauren said, "Where's the title?" I said, "In the thing where the titles, where we keep them?" "No." And then we realized we have 8 cars, and we have one lien, and it's on the Audi. And it's not a real big lien, but we had actually extended earlier lien. That when we bought it, we got it financed by the Methodist Credit Union, who are great folks, and and so we extended it when we had bought the VW, which we traded for the BMW. So anyway, so there's still a lien on us. We didn't have the title, so the deal fell through, and I definitely had an idiot moment. But so that was about a week ago, and I've been pinging. I've put up the E500 for sale or trade, and I had completed my first stage of restoration to it, and it was kind of a redundant vehicle in that we have, a good number of good working 4-door cars at the moment. And so, if you hear this in the background, say hi, Ruthie. Say hi to the Internet.
Hi.
Hi. What you doing? You're playing?
Yeah, I'm
You playing with your baby? Show us your baby. Show us your pretty baby right there. Right there that you were just playing with on the floor. Right by your foot. Show us your baby.
That's my baby.
Yeah, that's your baby. Show us. Is she sleeping? Why is she on the floor? Okay. Well, I'll let you get back to it. The hard work of childhood. Oh, okay. Okay. Babies on the chairs have pink. Okay. So that deal fell through, and I felt like quite the doofus for it. In retrospect, while I was totally intending to trade, I'm kind of glad we kept the Audi. I like to refer to the Audi as our unicorn because it's so rare as a vehicle in the American market to have a all-wheel drive wagon 5-speed manual transmission, with a little 4-cylinder turbo. It's a really great setup. We just don't drive it that much at the moment because we're mostly putting miles on our Mercedes, but it's still a great car, and so we might decide to do something with that. But the vehicle I was looking to sell or trade was the E500, and with that I had gone through it and I'd replaced the air ride compressor, which greatly improved the air ride situation, but I did discover there was a small leak at the top of the strut. And so I shot a video for that, and I was working on the trying to seal the leak. The problem there, so it had on the driver's side, it had a new strut, but on the passenger side, it had an original strut. And here's the stupid thing: the strut itself was absolutely fine. It functioned fine. The bag was fine. It was fine. The problem with it was at the top of the strut, where the air line plugs into it, there is a small metal retaining compression fitting, and that metal fitting screws into the plastic head of the strut. So, and these things are extremely expensive, and so it's a very, very simple little thing. It's just that the plastic threading on the strut itself gets stripped by an overzealous torquer on the nut, and so I had replaced the nut initially thinking that it was the nut that was the problem, because I didn't realize it was stripped in there. I just knew that it wasn't holding tight, and so I got a bag of those compression fittings and put a new one on there, and I noticed, and I was being very careful, but I noticed that you can just keep turning it, and it seems like it's tight, but that it never really stops turning. And I noticed that even when you thought it was in there, you could just pull it right back out. So I was at the point where it's like, do I put a bunch of money into this, because the strut to be rebuilt would be a minimum of about $400 to $500. That is, there are some rebuilding places I know that they work through eBay as well, that you can take the strut off, mail it to them for like $500, $400 to $500. They'll refurb it and send it back to you. I mean, that's still a lot of money, especially for a piece of the suspension. And and again, otherwise the strut worked fine. It was just that very tiny little leak there. So what I did was a multi-stage process, and I put glue around the threads of the retaining nut, and epoxy, not just glue, but hardened epoxy, and so I got that in there so it wouldn't come out. Okay, I'm doing something right now. Give me a minute, okay? So I got it so that he couldn't pull it out. It was secure in there. The epoxy bonded with the plastic fine and the threadings of the retaining nut. So, it was in there fine, but it still leaked. And so it would pump up. It wouldn't immediately, go down, but overnight it would go down. So the next stage is I took steel epoxy putty and worked it in around the fitting itself, and that also made it better, but still wasn't a perfect airtight seal. So the next stage is I took fiberglass resin and mixed it with some long grain fiberglass shards, for body work, and basically just made a molded patch around it, and that was really good and almost perfect, but the one little edge of the seal, it still wasn't quite fully bonding, and so it had a very slow leak. So the very last thing that I did to it was I took flue tape for chimneys, and I cut strips of flue tape and made like a weave over that spot, so all the edges were covered by the flue tape, and that did it, and everything, then it worked fine. And so for like a dollar or two worth of materials, I was able to save a $700 strut, because otherwise the thing worked great. On the road it was awesome. I mean, that car, we codenamed it Aladdin, because it's like riding a magic carpet. the way that it just levels, and you're literally sitting on bags, pockets of air, so you feel like you're hovering. It feels like a hover car, the way that it just slides over the road and cuts through the corners where the suspension just completely levels. You don't, and the seats push against you. I mean, it is a fantastic car. So I knew it was worth some, serious money, even with having a cracked windshield and not working AC and, some of the little blemishes here and there. It wasn't perfect. The back bumper had some, cracking and so forth, but that was a solid V8. That was the big V8, the 5-liter V8 Mercedes. So I knew it was worth something. So I kept pinging people looking for a comparably priced 4x4 rig, and finally got, well, finally, feels like a long time because you do a lot of pinging and this sort of thing. It takes a lot of, offers before you get something. So I probably pinged 20 people over the course of 2 to 3 weeks, and but I've found the one that we wanted, and I showed it to Lauren, and she agreed, like, yes, this is the one. And the guy really wanted the Mercedes, so it worked out. It worked out perfect. So we traded it for a 2003 Land Rover Discovery 2, and it's only got 100,000 miles on it, which is great, and it is built. It's built. It's got 2.5 inch or so. I'm not. It's somewhere between 2 to 3 inches lift. It's a brand new suspension, all new struts. The tires are brand new, less than 300 miles on them. Well, we just put 100 miles, so they're maybe 400 now. We've actually, the moment we bought it, we drove it all around, putting miles on it, and we drove it up to Brasstown Bald, and I mean, it is solid. It is a solid vehicle. Got a 4.6 liter V8. It is just a classic looking SUV, like a real SUV. I complain about SUVs, and what I complain about are the things that really a person ought to have a car. It's not a real SUV. It's not a utility vehicle. It's a car with a top-heavy suspension. That's all it is. That gets worse gas mileage. And a lot of that is just the American automotive market finagling the EPA's emission standards. Oh, we can take the same car and lift it 2 inches, 3 inches, and call it an SUV, and then hooray, hurrah, now we can get away with having crappy emissions. It just, most SUVs I find really silly. Cars are just better all around for just passengers, moving them around, or vans. If you have a situation where you need a lot of people, get a van, right? Van still, and so a lot of the SUVs I just find like they're just like their car or van contemporaries, except less good. But the qualification of that category are actual SUVs. 4x4 rigs that are built for towing, off-roading, trailing, that sort of thing. And so, like, Sean has an awesome SUV. He's got the 2005 Jeep Grand Cherokee. It's the really top-end one with the 5.7 liter Hemi. Brilliant vehicle, and he's built it up. He's put money into it, light bar and the lift and massive tires and everything. I mean, it's a really cool build. And so I wanted something, comparable to that. I wanted something that, I would be comfortable putting the family in and driving around. I don't want just something with cloth doors on it, but, still could actually go off-roading and could actually have some hauling power. So that was what I was looking for, and this just perfectly fit my bill. The guy that I traded it to, his reasoning for getting rid of it is that he built it as a trail rig. He had it for just over 2 years, and he only put a few thousand miles on it because it was just kind of the toy. He was explaining he and his wife, he's got a kid, and they mostly drive. They have a Mazda 3, which was their primary driving vehicle, and this was just their second vehicle and their toy. Oh, thank you. Wonderful. And so it was just kind of their toy. Well, he got a job that was requiring him to commute long distance, 70 miles round trip, he was telling me. And so this is just not a great commuting vehicle, especially not with the build. Like, maybe in its original condition. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you.
It's great.
Uh-huh. So it just wasn't working well, not great gas mileage, putting it mildly, and it's not built for highway long-term driving. So he really wanted a good highway car, and he knew he put some serious cash into this. The winch on there, put a lot of money into that. The light bars, the tires themselves were over wonderful, over $1,000. I mean, he put a lot of money building this, and so he wanted a good, a really good road car. And so I told him, if you get the windshield done and fix these couple little things, like this is a fantastic driving car. And so I showed him what I had done to the air ride. I'm not trying to hide anything from anybody. I showed him how I patched it, explained all the layers and everything, and told him, long term, your two options are either to replace that strut or convert the system to springs and coils. But given that it was working fine, I mean, I think he could really get down the road a good long ways before he ever has to decide that. Because I feel confident in the quality of my patch, that it should really hold for a good long distance. But anyway, so that's what's been going on there, and so I'll be putting out a supplemental video with my first and second impressions of the Land Rover, which, spoiler alert, I'm very, very impressed with. I really, really like this car, and so does Lauren. We drove it all over the place this weekend and just loved it. And so on the other, well, I haven't heard anything about the firehouse. Sean and I have decided that we are going to get a chopping business going. That really is our best bet for our assets and for low overhead and so forth. Getting a mechanic business, I'd love to do that, but you have to have insurance and bonding and all of this stuff. You have to have the location. I mean, there's a lot of you have to have. There's a lot of front end input, and I still would like to do that, but it's going to take some money to put into it, and I really don't want to take out a big loan because I might not stay here. I might only stay here for the year while Lauren's finishing up, and then we might move. So I mean, the future is very uncertain at this point with us. So Sean and I have been watching this 87 944 that was disabled because of a dead water pump, and the water pump on those cars, it's kind of stupid that they have it on the timing belt, and so it's hard to get to. You have to remove the timing belt, which takes a lot of disassembly on the front end of the engine. It's not a ridiculously bad operation, but it is tricky, and it's not an easy do-it-yourself sort of thing, right? So it's not a quick fix. So we were looking at would we want to buy it to restore it, and we were like, look, it was listed for $1,000 firm. We tried to get him down on that, and he said firm. I was like, all right, like we could definitely get our money's worth out of the parts, right? So like Sean's looking at pulling, or he was looking at. We didn't end up the sad end of the story is we didn't end up getting it. Somebody, like, as Sean was getting the trailer set up and getting everything ready to go, said nope, another guy bought it, so we didn't end up getting it. But we had calculated out, like, what could we get out of this car and what is it worth, and just thinking like the things that we would swap out for onto his 944: the hood, the MAF sensor, what else, the ECU. I mean, just a couple parts and we're already over $1,000 in parts that we could easily swap off it. So what we've decided to do is to start hunting for, well, we really need to get a trailer set up. So we're ideally going to get a dolly because it's just easier to do, right? That is a one axle, a two wheel hauling thing where you can put the car on, put it in neutral, and two of the wheels are still on. You usually see those like behind RVs and stuff, and they're cheaper, and it's just a lot easier to store than a 25 foot trailer. So we're looking at trying to source one of those, and so what we're going to do is, because a lot of cars come up disabled, and people don't want a dead car, generally speaking. But for $600, $800, we can get nice dead cars. Not unlike the Mercedes 300. If we can't get it going, we'll still chop that thing. Like there's a lot more than $600 worth of parts in it that we could easily chop and sell online. And I see dead Lexus, Infiniti, Mercedes, BMWs go up all the time for less than $1,000. Oh, it's been sitting, and oh, we parked it because the head gasket blew, whatever. I can get more than $1,000 of parts. Like in a day's work, I can pull off that much. Now, of course, it then has to sell, but we're looking at expanding at our house so we don't have to buy any property. Actually making a little turnabout in the front, since we've got these great 4x4 vehicles. We can haul the vehicles up the hill and kind of park them over out of the way and get them lined up, and just start with one, chop that sucker. Once we get our money back, buy another one, and then keep selling the parts off the first one, and so forth. Yep, that's me. That's me on the camera. So anyway, so that's our plan. So that's what we are looking at doing now, and I think it would be a really good venture. Not a lot of front end input, and we could start pretty quickly making our money back. So say hi, Ruthie.
Hi.
Hi, you're so sweet.
Yeah.
So that's what we're up to. I think we've got a really good idea going. It's just a matter of putting it together at this point. Okay. So this week we're not really doing any projects as such. Rather, since just traded for this 2003 Land Rover, I'm going to go through first impressions, getting into it, some of the things I noticed, the processes that I'm going through to clean it up. I mean, the thing is just, covered in mud, really gritty, but really good shape. So I'm cleaning it up, getting the engine bay cleaned up, getting all the mud off of it and so forth, and getting into the various systems, starting to work a little bit on the body, as I explained in the video, just trying to make it kind of kid friendly, because there were some sharp edges on the back end in particular, where there's been some body damage around the corner of the bumper. And so knocking all that down and just getting into it. And so this will be kind of an overview of the Land Rover and some of the things I've noticed about it, and really enjoying it so far as a vehicle. I think it's going to be really fun truck to have. So rather than projects for today's episode, we're just going to be focusing on the profile of our newly acquired 2003 Land Rover Discovery 2. This is the L319 series Discovery. It has the SE trim. These were produced between 1998 and 2004. This is specifically a phase 2 in the second half of that, from 02 to 04. And even further, it is a facelift. They call it facelift model, that you can tell by the front headlights. The important thing about the facelift model is that it does have the locking differential. In 2001, Land Rover ceased having a locking differential. Even though it still could lock, it took away the linkage for your ability to lock the differential. The differential lock, the idea there is that it is actually forcing the wheels to turn at the same time, and basically disabling the independent spinning of the wheels, right? So that's important when you go into low four-wheel drive, that it locks the differential. That way you can push through and so forth. So that makes it more capable as an off-road vehicle. This has the 4.6 liter V8 Rover engine. This is a dynamite engine, very, very sturdy. These are used in a lot of either the Land Rovers, the Discoveries, and the Range Rovers. They were also used in a limited extent. They stroked them out to 5 liter in TVR applications. This was a high-end sports car, British sports car. This does not, it's not a super powerful engine in terms of horsepower, about 220 horsepower. The numbers on this range a little bit, but it is very torquey, 300 foot-pounds of torque, and at a very low RPM, only 2,600 RPM, and you're already pushing. In fact, it really at about 23, 24, you're already getting close to max torque. So very torquey, great for off-roading. It's very tall. I added the ground clearance, 10 inches stock ground clearance. We've added extra with the tires and so forth. And you also have the height itself is very high, 76 inches.
Again, it's not a real fast vehicle. You know, it still gets 0 to 60 under 10 seconds, at least in its stock formula. But, you know, not real high top speed, less than 120. I mean, this is really an off-roading. It's a true SUV. The mileage stated is either 12 or 13 on the bottom, 16 on the top, 15 average. We just got the vehicle, only put about 100 miles on it, and so we haven't been able to start tracking the MPG. Previous owner said he was only getting 10 to 12, which is largely accounted for because the lift, the build system on it with the extra big tires and so forth, but probably also because he wasn't really driving it around much. He was mostly just trailing it, and you know, it's kind of a toy vehicle. So we'll see what it gets. You know, this has been built up. It's I would call it a medium duty trail vehicle. You know, a heavy duty is where you have mud tires. You have massive. It's really just not capable for going on the highway. I'd put this as medium duty because it's more than just your stock SUV, which would be a light duty trail vehicle. But here it also, I'm really impressed with how it drives on the road. You know, it handles remarkably well, even though I still drive it extra careful being as tall as it is. The towing capacity is also very impressive for this vehicle at a whopping 7,700 pounds or 3,500 kilograms, which is one of the things that really attracted me to it because, you know, we're hoping to get a system for hauling dead, disabled cars, and so, you know, this would be absolutely perfect for doing just that.
So we traded the E500 last night for this 2003 Land Rover Discovery 2. This thing is in great shape and has a brand new set of 5 tires, brand new. Very nice. You know, it's been off-roaded. It's had, you know, some trail time put on it, but it is in really phenomenal shape. I mean, it's got a little bit of body damage, but you know, nothing severe. Some trim pieces and so forth that could stand to be put back on, and it's got a really awesome 12,000 pound winch on the front. It's got the off-road style bumper on there, really nice. Got 360-degree lights because it's got these up front and it's set in the back. This has got the 4.6 liter V8. It is all-time four-wheel drive. It is four-wheel drive in that it does have a transfer case for going into low setting for off-roading purposes. Got the roof rack. Interior, it's muddied up because these doors are designed to pop off easily so you can trail it. And it has been trailed. There's some mud in it, but the interior is actually in really nice shape. There's no cracks in the dash. The headliner was recovered by the previous owner, so it's still got a lot of trim pieces that are out, that are just in the back that I need to put back in. A few things like that, but the leather is in great shape. Really nice seats. This is a really cool vehicle. It's an intersection between luxury and function, as it's a very rugged, it's a true utility vehicle, not just a car that's been jacked up. The true utility. Got a lot of room, a lot of space. It's a very tall vehicle, and you get a lot of cubic space inside. This has got also a lift kit. I mean, this thing is really well built. And it's only got 100,000 miles on it, which is just awesome. The engine sounds perfect, transmission smooth, very little road noise. I was amazed going onto the highway with the first drive in it, when the seller took me around in it. I was shocked by how nice it drove on the highway, because you expect a big jacked up utility vehicle like this to have a lot of road noise and wobble and
clunk, but it was smooth and quiet on the highway, which was shocking considering what it is. One of the things I really personally love about the design of this vehicle is that it has an actual door for the rear rather than a hatch. Yeah, here's all the trim pieces here. Again, the interior is in just great shape. All the paneling, it's muddy and crusty, but all the paneling is in very, very good shape. Just needs, you know, a little bit. And the headliner, again, recently recovered, did a good job on that. Really cool vehicle. Now this is the 5-seat configuration, but from what I've read online, it's easy to convert it to a 7-seater. Cool thing there is that you can, you know, one of the problems with third row is access. How do you get back there? Most SUVs, it's very tough to get in there, but this is an actual door, so you can get in and out really easily, because here's your door latch, and it works just like a door. So you can actually climb in through the back, which is just so cool. The older style, the Discovery 1, the seats would fold down sideways here. They call these jump seats. From what I've been able to discern reading forums and such, in the Discovery 2 they did away with these, and you have front-facing seats that go here and can fold down. But you know, I was really hoping we could put the side ones in, although not nearly as safe, but you know, a lot easier access for stowing. You know, because I don't want to get rid of my cubic space back here, so we're gonna look and decide if we want the third row. It's a nice feature, you know, if we want to go forward with it. And this has got the 2 sunroofs, so it actually has a back hatch sunroof as well, which is really cool. Really awesome car. Thing just sounds great. I'm gonna take it out for a road test. Got the insurance and everything put on it, so really pleased with it. Working on cleaning up our new acquisition here, the 2003 Discovery. Really impressed with this vehicle so far. Only 100,000 miles. It's well used. You know, it's got some bumps and bruises, but overall in really great condition. Engine sounds very strong. Whole system's working really well. This whole engine bay totally covered by mud, and so I'm degreasing, demudding, all the above. All these drains are filled with mud and gunk, so blowing all of that out. The underneath everything though looks really great, nice, and you know, once I got the mud off, there's no rust on anything. The undercarriage is particularly impressive. You see it's got a nice set of aftermarket shocks there, about a looks like maybe 2.5 inch lift. The differential looks excellent. Front sway bars, everything, just not a bit of rust. This front winch system, really impressive. Smitty built 12,000 pound electric winch, and this sucker is solid, bolted and welded in there with it's got a good weld on it. I'm gonna grease everything up, make sure there's no rust, but really impressed with this vehicle. I hope the seller enjoys the E500. He needed a commuting vehicle, something that is a roadmaster. This is not something, he said he was driving 70 miles a day now for his job, and this is just not a long distance commuter vehicle. That 500, however, will just eat the highway. Very comfortable, so I hope he really enjoys it. It was a great car, but somewhat redundant given our current selection of vehicles, and really wanted something, since both the Ford trucks are being nasty and not wanting to run, really wanted a truck vehicle to haul stuff around, and really wanted a trail capable vehicle, a nice 4x4. This fit my bill just perfect, just exactly what I was looking for. I've always wanted one of these, so
really pleased with the trade. Now it's just a matter of getting her all cleaned up and scrubbed and greased and oil change and all that good stuff. So we might call this a second impressions video. This is after we have had time to really get into and start learning the ins and outs of our new acquisition, this 2003 Land Rover Discovery 2. I'm really impressed with this vehicle. It's a little rough around the edges. It's got some trim pieces missing, as you can see right here. In fact, I already, you know the car is yours when you've put some blood into it, and I nicked my thumb on a little jagged piece that I dug out of there yesterday. It's left over from that trim that's missing. So, you know, it's not in perfect condition by far. It's got a lot of bumps and bruises and dings and things like that, lots of scrapes, but you know, it's been trailed. So my assumption is probably a lot of this has been from, you know, tree limbs and things like that, that it's past maybe a rock along the way. But very, very impressed with this vehicle. The headliner had been recovered by the previous owner, so he's got the trim pieces out. I just put this piece back in, the back edge along the headliner there. It was very easy to get in, very sturdy. It just had these retaining clasps. As long as you got them lined up well, it just took a little bit of light pounding with my fist, and they're all in there real good. And so that was a very easy piece to do there. You know, in this video I'm just going to run through some of the things that I'm doing to the vehicle right off the bat, and the ways in which I'm cleaning and improving it. You know, one thing, so you see this has got this really great solid steel off-road bumper on the back with the big horseshoe clasps there, so you can get towed out by your buddy with his winch. The weld lines here are real good. They're very sturdy. I'm impressed with whoever did the welding. But you know, one thing that you want to do is grease weld lines, because weld solder does have a tendency to rust, and there was already a little bit of rust lightly on there, so you know, slathered some of this grease down in there, and working through with, you know, cleaning it out. It's very, very muddy still. You know, again, it's been a trail vehicle most recently, and so I mean, this thing was totally covered in mud. The engine bay in particular was just completely drenched in mud. So the vehicle is in really good shape. I'm impressed in particular with the state of the seats, which are quite comfortable. You know, for being a very kind of rugged, pragmatic, utilitarian vehicle, it's got these touches of luxury and class. The seats, probably the foremost on that list. Very, you know, sturdy. They're not soft, but they're plush still. That they're very comfortable, very well designed. I like the way it sits. The vehicle handles surprisingly well. Not a huge fan of SUVs, generally speaking, I have to be honest. I think most SUVs ought to just be cars, and that it just makes a less practical car. But if you're going to have an SUV, have something that's an actual SUV. I mean, this thing is a true off-road vehicle. It is apocalypse ready, you might say. Got the light bars, got the heavy-duty winch and everything. So, I mean, it is a beast. I drove it last night. Again, we put about 100 miles on it yesterday. We drove it up to Brasstown Bald, which was a nice chug up that hill. Really put it through its paces, and did very well. I mean, it's quite a haul to get up that hill, and it did great going up there. In fact, took the family up there in it. I feel very confident in the abilities of this vehicle. It just exudes sturdiness and has, you know, thus far been utterly reliable. It's got some weird sensors, things that I'm going to have to work through that pop up on the dash. It's got some weird things, you know, this and that. Again, not all the trim pieces are there, like this one over here is missing. So I will probably, as I work on it, replace the trim, restore it. Gotta love the accents there, the rubber ducky and the little princess on her pony. My wife in particular really loved that. This thing's got a 12,000 pound Smitty built
winch on the front, very tough. I can't wait to use it. It's got, let's see, 7, 8, 9 piece light bar system that actually extends 360, and it's got a great panel. All of this, of course, is aftermarket. The thing that really attracted me to this vehicle and convinced me to trade the 500 for it is that, you know, not only is it a, you know, high-end SUV, it's a classic. Land Rovers just have this classic look to them. You know, they change very little stylistically over time, and very rugged. They're, you know, the English Jeep. And the gentleman's Jeep, right? It's, you know, they have some sensor issues and whatnot. It's still an English vehicle, but mechanically I'm very, very pleased with this. Very, very rugged. The undercarriage, you know, crawled up under there, and it's got some mud, so I'm working on cleaning all of that off, but there's no rust. Nothing is rusted through. All the mud is very light. You know, this has not been bogged down, but I am going to be working on cleaning all of that up, getting all that mud off, because the problem with mud is it, of course, retains moisture. So after I knock the mud off and clean everything off, I'm, of course, going to grease everything I can get my fingers onto. This, you can see, has got the parallel beams, very, very sturdy design. Like, really impressed with the way that this thing just takes bumps and just doesn't even, you know, squawk about it. It's very, very, very well done undercarriage. This has about a 2.5-inch lift, I believe, on it. It's got aftermarket struts that give it that extra stance so it can sit up higher and get the rubber. Oh, you don't have to escape. You don't have to flee the shot. That's Sean. We're gonna be working on the 928 today also. But yeah, this, you know, with a little bit of work, a little bit of TLC, I'm going through and cleaning everything off. My process for cleaning is to use a product called Tough Stuff. So this, you can see, I have not cleaned this side yet, and all the mud's been kind of ground into the carpet, but still recoverable. The carpet's really not in bad shape. It's just muddy and squished down. Tough Stuff will really help, and you can see all of this. Like, I've already in the engine compartment been cleaning out all the mud, trying to get it off the engine, because it does make it, you know, hotter, because you're creating a layer of thermal barrier. And we'll be doing an oil change. Went and got filter while we were out this morning for church. The leather is cleaning up real well. You know, already I'm getting a lot of the scum and everything off. Like you can see there, it's still very dirty, but up here is where I've cleaned, and turning out real nice. There's no rips in the leather, which I'm real impressed. You know, this is not a real old vehicle, but 2003, still got some wear on it, and the leather's in remarkably good shape. And we've got some other things, you know, again, the headliner has been recovered, so the trim pieces are out, so we'll be putting those in. I will say one thing that I just found ridiculous is the lack of an actual cover for this. This has 2 skylights, 2 sunroofs, right? And independently, you know, you can open them, but it doesn't have an actual hatch that comes over this. Instead, it's got these silly little, like, the Mercedes tend to put these in the windows of the back seats, but not here. I mean, here you want that actual hatch that'll come over and close it. And as you can see here, this one, the tab is broken off on it. So you can only do it to the one side, which is also ridiculous. Why would you want I don't know. So that's a silly feature. That's about the only thing that I really don't like too much about the vehicle. Otherwise, I'm super impressed, and really looking forward to putting some miles on this and working on it and improving it. Working here on kind of just tapping in some of the bad body bits here. So I'm going to tap that in. My guess is probably this ran up against something that impaled it right there. But just using, you know, this kind of sheet metal work, real easy, just working with a hammer. I'm not trying to make it look perfect. I'm just trying to get rid of sharp edges and rough corners and stuff. You can see this is crimped around here. This one is a little softer because this is just a body panel going up the side, but this piece is, you can hear the difference. This is a serious steel on the back there, and so, you know, pounding out those corners, doing that sort of thing here, just trying to make it a little bit more kid friendly. Don't want a kid impaling themselves, so like this was bent up and just tapping it back. And you know, the key there is you don't want to hit hard, you just want to take nice light taps and slowly meld it. That will make sure that you don't break anything. If you know it's really hard, you can always heat it with a torch slightly, and that'll make it a little more malleable. I don't think I'm going to need to do anything like that here, but just tapping out the body and making it a little better. I plan to clean this up on the bottom row there and hit it with some undercoating, truck bed coating type stuff, just to dress up around the bottom panel. Dear Lord, we come to you this week with humble and open hearts. We ask that you bring light to us. We ask that you guide our path so that wherever we are in life, whether the peaks or the valleys, wherever we are, that you find us, that you comfort us, that you guide us, that you lift us up in our joys, that you wipe away the tears and our sorrows. We ask that you particularly reach out into the lives of the watchers, the listeners, the audience of this show, and open them to receptivity for your love, for an outpouring of your goodness, and show us your light, show us your love in all things. In Christ we pray, amen.